Cascade Mall, Burlington, Washington. September 23rd, 2016. It started like any other Friday evening. Warm yellow lights reflected across the polished tile. Children begged for pretzels. Teenagers lingered at the makeup kiosks, trying on lip gloss testers they wouldn't buy. Somewhere near the entrance to Macy's, a young girl waited for her mother. The building hummed in a rhythm only small-town America knows. Families talk about dinner. A couple argued gently over which can to buy. No one noticed a man walking alone. Not at first. He didn't run. He didn't look nervous. There was no backpack, no trench coat. He simply entered, blended in. Surveillance footage would later show him walking past store windows, stopping, turning, measuring something only he could see. When he passed a mother helping her child tie his shoe, she smiled at him. He didn't smile back. The first call came at 6:26 p.m. A woman's voice, ragged and disoriented. "There's a shooter at Macy's." A pause. "There's people on the floor." The dispatcher asked her to repeat it. "There's people down. I think they're dead." The second call came 30 seconds later. Then the third. Then the lines flooded. In the space of 2 minutes, the Cascade Mall became a war zone. Police would later describe the scene as pure chaos. Paramedics weren't allowed in. The shooter hadn't been located. Every second cost another life. 5 people were gunned down. A teenage girl in the junior section. A Macy's employee who had just clocked in. A 95-year-old woman. Her daughter. A man shopping for cologne. None of them had time to scream. The shooter used a Ruger 10-22 rifle. He brought it in, fired his shots, and left it behind on the counter, carefully placed. Then he walked out. By the time the first officers entered, he was long gone. No trace, no shell casings, just bodies. And the rifle, some thought it was terrorism. Some thought it was random. Nobody wanted to believe the truth, that someone had walked in, selected strangers, and executed them. Methodical, cold, like it meant nothing. A mother called to ask if her daughter had boarded the evacuation bus. She hadn't. A man waited outside, saying his wife and mother-in-law had gone into Macy's. He stood by his truck until an officer approached. "I can't leave," he said. "They're in there." Inside, a security guard walked past the lipstick counter and recognized a woman he'd spoken to earlier that afternoon. She'd said, "Have a good shift." He'd said, "You too." And now she wasn't moving. The building was locked down. Drones buzzed overhead. SWAT teams went store to store, clearing dressing rooms and stock rooms and fitting booths. But he was gone. The cameras had captured him, but no one knew who he was. He didn't run. He didn't panic. He looked like someone out for a walk. Hundreds of witnesses would later remember the same thing. He didn't say a word. He didn't yell. He didn't make a scene. He didn't have a target. He just killed. 5 minutes. 5 dead. The rifle left like a signature. The Cascade Mall never reopened the same way again. Even now, years later, some shoppers still glance over their shoulders when walking past a department store. And the town still remembers the way the air changed. Right before dusk, he walked out the same way he came in. There were no alarms, no shattered glass, no screaming crowds in his path. He didn't need them. He had already left his message written in blood on tile floors, across cosmetic counters, on the backs of abandoned shopping carts. Outside, dusk swallowed the parking lot. Parents clutched their children tighter. Sirens pierced the silence. But he was already part of the night. By midnight, the mall had turned into a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the parking lot. Officers stood in clusters, quiet and grim. It wasn't just the bodies. It was the way it happened. No one knew who he was. No name. No motive. No escape vehicle. But they had something. A camera. Inside Macy's, just above the perfume display, one of the many mall surveillance cameras had caught him. The footage was raw. Unfiltered. He moved through the store like he'd been there before. Head down. Rifle steady. He didn't hesitate. He raised his weapon and fired. Each shot had the weight of finality. Each movement rehearsed. Investigators watched in silence as the teenage girl collapsed behind a rack of Junior's jeans. Another frame. A woman reaching for her mother. A blur. Then nothing. In one still frame. He turns briefly toward the camera. His expression flat. Not angry. Not smug. Just empty. Detectives pause the footage. Zoomed in. That's when the tip line lit up. Call after call. Some helpful. Most not. Then a woman said a name. Arcan Cetin. She pronounced it slowly, hesitantly. Spelled Arcan. Last name, Cetin. She wasn't the only one. Another caller said he looked like her stepson's half-brother. Another said they recognized him from Facebook. By dawn, one name had appeared enough times to stand out. Arcan Cetin, 20 years old, immigrant, lived in Oak Harbor. The police found his mother first. She opened the door wearing confusion. Not fear. Not yet. She told him her son had dinner with her just before the shooting. Left around 5. Said he had work. When they showed her the image from Macy's, her body went still. That's him, she whispered. Then again, quieter. That's my son. The detectives asked about guns. She didn't know, but her husband might. David, Arcan's stepfather, was a retired Navy man. He kept a .22 caliber Ruger rifle in the closet. When he checked, it was gone. Yes, he said, that's mine. He looked down. He's used it before. I taught him. The same model left on the Macy's counter. It was enough. Enough to move him from unknown subject to primary suspect. Still, there was no sign of him. No phone calls. No online activity. His apartment was quiet. But across town, someone remembered something strange. A convenience store clerk said he sold a pack of gum to a quiet man around 10 p.m. Security footage showed it too. It was Arcan, wearing the same clothes. The killer had bought gum, smiled politely. Behind him, a uniformed officer entered the store. But the two never crossed paths. One walked in, the other walked out. A silent miss. What no one realized yet was that while Burlington was in lockdown, Arcan was strolling through Seattle, the Space Needle, the waterfront. Tourists snapped selfies near him. Somewhere in that crowd, he sat and ate lunch. No one knew what he had done. No one knew they were sitting beside a man who had just executed 5 strangers. He was blending in again, vanishing in plain sight. Later that night, he went home, and the trap was waiting. He didn't resist. Didn't ask why. When officers placed the cuffs on him, his face didn't change. Not a word. The man who had emptied a rifle in a public mall surrendered like someone handing over his library card. But the question wasn't how he did it. The question was why. Why 5 strangers? Why Macy's? Why now? And why did it feel like this wasn't his first plan? But his backup? He should have never made it to Macy's. That wasn't the plan. If things had gone the way he wanted, there would have been no store aisle, no perfume counters, no mother shielding her own. There would have been screams in the dark, inside a movie theater. Arcan Cetin bought a ticket to Snowden. He walked in alone. It was Friday, September 23rd, 2016, just after 6 p.m. The movie had barely started. He wasn't there to watch. He walked to the back of the theater, down a short corridor, and reached the emergency exit. Took out his phone, wedged it in the door, left. The plan was to come back later. Sneak in, seal the door, open fire, just like the man in Aurora, Colorado, just like the blueprint he'd studied. But something went wrong. An employee found the phone, turned it in, didn't think twice. Arcan returned, saw the door was closed. His face changed. A witness remembered the moment. He came back, looked right at me. He was twitchy, aggressive, kept asking if I had his phone. I told him to back off. He stared for a few seconds, then just walked away. Security footage showed him pacing, then leaving. Plan A ruined. Inside Theater 11, 32 people were watching Snowden. Had the phone not been found, they wouldn't have finished the film. A saved life is a quiet thing. No sound, no blood, just silence where death should have been. He tried another route. Chuck E. Cheese. Children's laughter behind glass windows. Bright lights. Busy parents. He walked through the entrance, looked around, kept his hands in his pockets. That's where his nerve failed. He told investigators later, "I thought people might notice me. A grown man, alone. I got in my car and left." The hesitation was immoral. It was tactical. He wasn't afraid to kill children. He was afraid of getting caught before he could. His words, not ours. I didn't care, kids or not. Eventually, he settled on Macy's, the women's department. The entrance was quiet. Few cameras, few guards, plenty of victims. He popped the trunk of his mother's blue Chevy Cavalier, pulled out the .22, walked calmly through the doors. The same doors where Shayla Martin had just started her shift. The same doors a 16-year-old cancer survivor had walked through, shopping for fall clothes. The same doors Belinda and her 95-year-old mother had entered moments before. He stalked the aisles, raised a rifle, and began. In the footage, his posture is composed, not erratic, not rushed, deliberate. A young girl drops instantly. A single shot. Then he moves, steps over merchandise, hears a scream, finds it. An employee crawls behind the counter. Try to escape. He shoots her twice in the back. A mother shields her elderly mom. They try to hide behind a cosmetic display. They don't make it. All of it caught on grainy CCTV. It ends in under 30 seconds. He exits the way he entered. No mask, no disguise, just a calm walk back to the car. He places the rifle on the counter, leaves. His target had changed, his motive still buried. At the time, the world thought they were chasing a lone wolf, a disturbed mind, maybe a radical. But no one, not even the seasoned detectives, understood just how calculated it all had been. Arcan wasn't looking for chaos. He was looking for control. And now that the plan had played out, he was ready to vanish. Until he wasn't. Because the thing about ghosts, they always leave footprints. The mall was chaos. Sirens, shouts, radio chatter on every frequency. More than 200 officers swarmed Cascade Mall within the hour. They didn't know if the shooter was still inside, or if he'd taken hostages, or if he'd kill again. Some victims were already gone. Others clung to life behind locked doors, crying to cell phones. Paramedics weren't allowed inside, not until the building was cleared, which meant some died alone. In the makeup section, a security guard crouched beside the dead. "I've seen death before," he later said. "Vietnam. 8 years as a medic. But this was different." Police swept store to store. Every kiosk, every dressing room, every shadowed corner. But there was nothing. No shooter. Just a .22 caliber Ruger, left neatly on the cosmetics counter. No shell casings. No fingerprints. Like a magician, he was gone. That's when the 911 calls started flooding in. 675 by the end of the night. From the hiding, the desperate, the waiting. A woman called in, trembling. "My daughter was shopping at Macy's." Another, "My girlfriend's mom works there. Is she alive?" One voice whispered through sobs, "Please, just tell me she's okay." Outside, buses lined up. Transport for the survivors. One by one, they were taken to his place church for reunification. Not everyone got on. Some waited at the barricades, clutching photographs. Because not everyone got off. And still no suspect, until surveillance footage was pulled. Inside Macy's, the man moved without panic. His walk was steady. Eyes forward, purposeful. He was young, dark-haired, average height, blue shirt. He didn't run, didn't look around, didn't flinch after the first shot. This wasn't rage. It was ritual. Investigators isolated the frame, sent it to the media, a still photo, a name unknown, but not for long. The tips came fast. "My stepson thinks he knows him. I saw his face on Facebook. His name's Arcan." Another call, Arcan Cetin, from Turkey. "He's the one you're looking for." His mother confirmed it. The face in the frame, the shirt, the walk, everything. Detectives showed her the image. She gasped, covered her mouth. then whispered, "That's him." She didn't know where he got the gun, but his stepfather did. David, a Navy veteran, kept his .22 rifle stored away. He checked. It was gone. And Arcan knew exactly where to find it. He'd even practiced with it. "He knows how to handle a gun," David said. "He was on the shooting team in high school." Police issued the warrant. Tracked his car, a dented blue Chevy Cavalier. The same vehicle seen leaving the scene. What they didn't expect was what Arcan was doing next. Because while Burlington mourned, he was sightseeing in Seattle at the Space Needle, buying food, smiling at strangers, blending in, a killer in a crowd of tourists, unnoticed, untouched. By the next day, he was back home, Oak Harbor, his apartment under surveillance. And when they took him down, he didn't resist, didn't flinch, didn't ask why. He just stared. The ghost had a name now, a face, and soon a story he couldn't stop telling. He said nothing at first, not to detectives, not to lawyers, not to his parents. In custody, Arcan Cetin sat still, smiling, shrugging, repeating the same empty phrase. "I don't know." But behind those words was calculation. It took over a month, November 2nd, before he finally talked. And when he did, the story he told was worse than anyone imagined. Cascade Mall was his first choice. It wasn't even his plan. "I was going to hit the movie theater," he said. Cascade was just the backup. He had gone in that night with intent, bought a ticket to Snowden, sat quietly in Theater 11, counted heads. But that wasn't all he did. Arcan walked to the back exit and propped it open, left his phone there, just inside the door, a small black wedge to keep it ajar, so he could return, armed, unnoticed, deadly. But fate or a stranger intervened. An employee found the phone, picked it up, turned it in, and unknowingly saved dozens of lives. Because when Arcan came back, the door was shut, the trap was sprung, and he panicked. He approached a man in the lobby, demanded his phone. "I know you took it," he snarled. The man backed away. "You're crazy," he said. And Arcan turned and left. He wasn't done, just derailed. The footage later showed him pacing, moving in and out of theaters, watching, waiting. Room 11, packed with 32 people, had been his target. And when the plan fell apart, he turned to Mall. "I drove around," he said, scoped it out, looked for a place with people. He circled the building, past the Chuck E. Cheese, paused. There were more people there, he said. "Kids." He was asked, "Did you think twice?" He shook his head. "No, I didn't care." The truth sat heavy in the room. This wasn't a man driven by a single trigger, not rejection, not ideology, not revenge. This was someone who needed something else. A rush, a spectacle, the chance to matter, if only through violence. He parked outside Macy's, popped the trunk, took out the rifle. Inside, 16-year-old Sarai Lara browsed the junior section, a cancer survivor, full of hope, oblivious to the figure approaching. He raised a rifle, fired. She crumpled without a sound. Shoppers heard it. Sharp pops. Confused at first. Fireworks? Construction? Then screams. The second victim, a man, looked up as Arcan approached. He whispered something. "Sorry," he said. Then Arcan shot in the leg. And when he fell, he finished it. Detectives asked, "Why did he say sorry?" Arcan blinked. "I don't know." He moved to the cosmetics counter. 3 women hid behind it. One a store employee, another trying to help her elderly mother. They thought he'd pass, but he didn't. He shot the crawling woman first, then the other 2. 5 lives ended in 60 seconds. One of them, Shayla Martin, had just said hello to a mall security guard moments before. She always sat outside before her shift, reading, smoking. She smiled, he recalled. "Wish me a good day." And then, gone. Outside, a father stood at the barricade. "My wife and mother-in-law are in there," he told the guard, described them in detail. The guard listened and lied. They're okay, sir. Just sit tight, because in his heart, he already knew. He'd seen their bodies. And across the parking lot, another man refused to leave. My daughter, he said, 16. She's still in there. By the end of that night, they would all go home alone. And Arcan, he was already on his way to Seattle. No remorse, no second thoughts, just hunger for the next rush. He left Burlington in silence. No sirens behind him, no helicopters overhead, just nightfall and a full tank of gas. By the time investigators identified him, Arcan Cetin, 20 years old, he was already gone. Gone, but not hiding. Not really. Security footage from the following evening showed him stepping into a convenience store like any other customer. Calm, casual, buying snacks. Behind the counter, the clerk scanned items. Oblivious. Smiled, handed him change. They were face to face. One man was hungry. The other had murdered 5 people 24 hours earlier. Outside, an officer briefly entered the store, looked around, saw nothing suspicious. Arcan slipped past him, not just unnoticed, unbothered. And then, Seattle. The Space Needle rose above the city. Iconic, touristy, crowded. That's where he went next. He had lunch there, in the sky, sitting beside strangers, clinking silverware, the world moving on around him. The kind of place that shouldn't feel safe for someone like him. But it did. He blended in. Tourists pointed at the skyline. Couples kissed. Children begged for photos. And Arcan just ate. By then, officers had already begun surveillance at his Oak Harbor apartment, waiting for a lead, waiting for him. It would take nearly 24 hours, but he returned. No rush, no disguise, no goodbye. Police moved in, quietly, decisively, and just like that, he was in cuffs. He didn't run, didn't resist, didn't speak. Inside the interrogation room, they asked him again and again, why? Why Cascade? Why Macy's? Why them? He shrugged. I don't know. Over and over. At one point, a detective leaned in. Do you even care? He smiled. But not the kind of smile that comforts. The kind that chills. When he finally began to talk, it came in fragments. Flat. Emotionless. He admitted he'd tried to target the theater first. Bought a ticket. Propped the door. And when asked what he'd planned to do if the phone hadn't been found, he answered, shoot. Where? In the head. In their seats. One by one. How many? As many as I had bullets. He said it like he was reading a grocery list. The interviewer paused, then asked, did you care that one of the theaters had children? He looked straight ahead. No, I didn't care. The answer landed like a stone in water. No ripple. Just wait. Later, he described walking through Chuck E. Cheese, watching families, children playing. I was trying to work up the nerve, he admitted. The next words hung in the air. There were more people in there. More targets. He admitted he got nervous. Too many eyes. Too much noise. So he changed course. Drove to the Macy's entrance. Parked. Opened the trunk. Took out the rifle. And walked in. What followed lasted 60 seconds. But its aftermath. Lifetimes. And still, he wasn't finished. I was planning something else, he said. Seattle. Monday. He'd planned to take his father's 12-gauge shotgun. Target Pike Place Market, one of the busiest tourist spots in Washington. Thousands of visitors daily. Tight aisles. Crowded stalls. You can hit a lot of people there, he said. The interviewer sat back. Stared. Why? Arcan didn't answer. But the real reason was coming. Not yet, but soon. And when it did, it would explain the smile. The calm. The chaos, because beneath all of it, there was a truth no one wanted to believe. He didn't snap. He chose. For weeks, he said it was terrorism. He told detectives he'd been inspired by Al-Qaeda, that a magazine Dabbick had shown him how to build a bomb, that he'd tried, failed, so he used a gun instead. He handed them the issue himself. Folded, worn, marked. At first, it made sense. The calculated attack, the cold silence, the choice of a crowded place. But something didn't fit. Not quite. It was in the smirk, the way he answered, or didn't, the way he waited to be recognized. When the agent asked if the violence had meaning, if it was about jihad, Arcan tilted his head. That's the icing, he said. The fame, the attention, that's the cake. It was never really about ideology. Not faith, not politics, not revenge. It was about being known. And now, the cracks began to show. Investigators turned their attention inward, to Oak Harbor, to the high school, to the girl he couldn't let go of. Her name was Molly. They'd dated for 9 months, broken up on New Year's Day. And afterward, it never stopped. He stalked her, messaged her, made fake accounts just to reach her. She blocked him, again and again. 56 people blocked him on Facebook, most of them women. He once told her, "I'm going to come down there and rape you, and kill anyone who gets in the way." She showed the message to detectives, said it like she'd memorized the words. Because you don't forget something like that. Molly's story unraveled a different Arcan, a jealous one, possessive, violent. He hit his own father for looking at her wrong, grabbed her arm until she bruised, was arrested for assaulting his parents. Another ex-girlfriend told police he had mood swings, sometimes quiet, sometimes cruel. One day, he spoke about the Oklahoma City bombing. Molly told him how sad it was. He replied, maybe they deserved it. There was a daycare inside, she said. There were children. He shrugged. Someone probably did something to deserve it. He didn't see victims, only statistics. In 2015, he was arrested at school for groping 2 female classmates, charged with assault with sexual motivation. He bragged about it, laughed. Friends described him as different. Off, a loner. One of them remembered an Xbox session. Countdown 3, 2, 1, and Arcan would yell, Allahu Akbar. Fire virtual rounds into sky. He said it as a joke. They thought. Now they weren't so sure. He played Call of Duty, Battlefield. But when asked if video games had trained him for the shooting, he scoffed. No, he said. Call of Duty doesn't kill people. People kill people. And in the silence that followed, he leaned forward, smiled, the same grin caught on security footage, as he walked through the mall with a loaded rifle and nothing in his way. It wasn't about games, or jihad, or ideology. Not really. He just wanted to kill. And he wanted you to know his name when he did. He wanted the president to know it, the governor, the news anchors. He wanted you to say it out loud. Arcan Cetin, the boy from Oak Harbor who made national headlines. The kid who shot 5 strangers and called it destiny. In private, he wrote letters, long ones, to his mother, to no one. In them, he spoke of serial killers, said he wanted to eat people, said he had no regret. Killing people is fun, he wrote. He listed names. Dylan Roof, Ted Bundy, Timothy McVeigh. He wanted to be among them, not forgotten, not pitted, remembered. And the scariest part? He almost wasn't lying. Inside the jail cell, the lights never fully turned off. The hum of fluorescent bulbs, the clank of metal doors. A place meant to contain, not comfort. And yet, for Arcan Cetin, it was still a stage. He refused visitors, refused remorse, but not attention. In the quiet hours, he wrote letters, for in total, each one darker than the last. One was to his mother, but even that was laced with violence. Talk of eating people, of killing staff, of becoming a serial killer, of enjoying what he had done. It was all written out, like a child's fantasy scribbled in the margins of a notebook. Only this wasn't imagination. I have no regret, he wrote. Killing people is fun. In another, he listed names. Not friends, not family, but killers. Dylan Roof, Timothy McVeigh, Ted Bundy. He admired them. He wanted to be one of them. His handwriting was clean, legible, unrushed. He had time. But not for long. On April 16th, 2017, just 7 months after the Cascade Mall shooting, guards found him unresponsive in his cell. He had tied a bedsheet to a light fixture and hanged himself. 2 notes were found nearby. One of them read, "I don't want to spend life in prison." Another said, "I want the death penalty." But the message was clear. He didn't want to be forgotten. He wanted control. And in death, he reclaimed it. There would be no trial, no cross-examinations, no sentencing, just a quiet end. The boy who once whispered, "I'm going to be famous," now rested in the same silence he'd given others. No apology, no explanation, only echoes. His story ended the way it began, with pain, not for him, but for the people he left behind, the families, the witnesses, the ones who had to relive it again and again through news reports, court delays, and now an obituary. But some memories don't fade with time, especially not the ones soaked in fear. One woman, a survivor who'd hidden beneath a clothing rack, would later say, "I still hear the pops, still wonder how close he came to me, how close I came to never walking out." Another, the daughter of Shayla Martin, the Macy's employee, established a scholarship in her mother's name, the Shayla K. Martin Scholarship, to help others, to build something that lasts longer than grief. Outside the mall, a memorial bloomed with candles, flowers, and notes. Some read, "We love you." Others, "You will never be forgotten." But the one that stood out most simply said, "We're sorry we couldn't stop him." And perhaps that was the hardest part for those who knew him. There were signs. So many signs. Friends recalled eerie jokes, strange stares, sudden anger. His ex-girlfriend told investigators he couldn't take rejection, that he spiraled after she left. A classmate remembered his obsession with death, with shooters, with being known. The letters confirmed what many had feared. He didn't act out of confusion, or impulse, or a single bad day. He wanted this. He wanted to be feared. And now, as investigators boxed up his notebooks, and families collected the belongings of the dead, a haunting truth remained. No one had seen him coming. But now, they couldn't look away. The mall would open again, cleaned, repainted, rebranded, new signs, new stores, a new name, the Burlington Gallery. But the ghosts hadn't gone anywhere. They lingered near the cosmetics counter, in the shoe aisle, in the empty dressing rooms of Macy's, places that once echoed with chatter, now whispered silence that couldn't be scrubbed away. 5 people were gone, each one torn from the world without warning. Sarai Lar was 16, a cancer survivor. She'd beaten leukemia just 2 years before. Her mother had dropped her off at the mall that day, just like any other. "She told me she'd text me when she was done shopping," her mother later said. She never did. Chuck Egan was 61, a Boeing maintenance worker. He'd spent his life building planes, never imagining that death would find him in a department store, leaning against a rack of winter coats. Shayla Martin, 52, was working her shift at the makeup counter. Always kind, always early. The last person to make small talk with a security guard before Arcan pulled the trigger. Belinda Gauld was 64, a probation officer from Snohomish County. She'd taken her 95-year-old mother, Beatrice Dotson, to Macy's that afternoon. A little shopping, a bit of browsing. They tried to hide together, bent low behind a shelf, arms wrapped tight around one another. Arcan found them anyway. 3 generations, erased in seconds. The aftermath was staggering, not just for the families, but for a community that had never seen violence like this before. Burlington was small, quiet, a place where people left their cars unlocked and knew each other by name. After the shooting, nothing felt familiar anymore. Survivors described panic, screaming, doors slamming shut, alarms blaring, parents pulling children by the hand, shoppers diving under tables. One woman said she ran barefoot out of the mall, leaving her shoes behind. Another tripped over a fallen mannequin, thinking it was a person. A man who had just arrived at the mall, wearing a white shirt, was mistaken for the shooter and tackled by police. "I kept saying I was just shopping," he said later. But in that moment, no one knew who to trust. The chaos extended far beyond the mall. Hospitals were flooded with calls. News outlets scrambled for answers. Families huddled outside police barricades, clutching photos of loved ones. One father refused to leave the parking lot, kept saying his daughter was inside. She hadn't answered her phone. He was still there at midnight. The next morning, investigators handed him her belongings: a purse, a pair of glasses, and a receipt from Macy's, time-stamped just minutes before the first shot rang out. There was no sense to be made, no closure. Because how do you process something so sudden, so senseless? The mall security footage filled in the gaps. Still frames, flashes of terror. In one, a woman crouched behind a kiosk. In another, Arcan walked calmly past a carousel, rifle in hand, face expressionless. He didn't run, didn't hide. He simply aimed and pulled the trigger, then vanished. For nearly 24 hours, the town didn't breathe. They locked their doors. They whispered his name, Arcan Cetin, the boy from Oak Harbor, the one who said it was all for attention. He wasn't insane, not legally, not diagnostically. He was something worse, deliberate. In later interviews, a few people tried to explain him. He was always kind of quiet, one teacher said, but polite, never aggressive. Another classmate recalled the opposite. He once said he wanted to shoot someone just to see what it felt like, but they brushed it off. People say things, right? The warning signs had been there. They just hadn't been loud enough. And now, families were left with questions that had no answers. Why them? Why that mall? Why that day? But Arcan wouldn't explain. Not truly. He offered pieces, lies wrapped in truth, truths diluted by ego. He said it was religion, then rage, then rejection, then fame. The reality? It was all of it, and none of it. In the vacuum left behind, grief took root, quietly, persistently. Each year, on September 23rd, candles are lit in front of the mall. Photos are laid gently on concrete benches. Names are spoken aloud. And in the stillness of that moment, the town remembers what it lost. Not just 5 lives, but its sense of safety, its innocence, its normal. That, too, was taken by a boy who wanted the world to know his name, and ensured it would, no matter the cost. The truth didn't end at the mall. It barely even began there, because what Arcan Cetin left behind wasn't just blood or headlines. It was a twisted legacy of questions that no one could comfortably answer. When investigators combed through his life, they found fragments, bits of rock buried beneath the surface no one had bothered to scratch. There was a childhood in Turkey, marred by war sounds, whispers of abuse, and an abrupt immigration to a place where no one spoke his name the right way. There were the diagnoses: ADHD, depression, maybe autism, maybe PTSD. There was also violence, not the kind that explodes in public, not at first, but the kind that festers in private. Assaults on his parents, on girlfriends, on strangers. At 17, he grabbed 2 girls at school, touched them in ways that weren't accidental. He was charged with assault, with sexual motivation. At 18, he shoved his mother into a wall, left bruises. At 19, he threatened an ex, texted that he would rape her and kill anyone who got in the way. She blocked him. So did 55 other women. That's not the story people knew. Not his co-workers. Not his neighbors. They remembered him as awkward, not dangerous. He played video games, they said. Battlefield. Call of Duty. Made edgy jokes, sure. But who didn't? He once screamed Allahu Akbar into a headset before shooting pixels on a screen. They laughed. Now they weren't laughing. Because when investigators found his final letters, left on the floor of his jail cell, beneath his lifeless body, they didn't read like regrets. They read like manifestos. I have no regrets. Killing people is fun. I want the death penalty. Life here is miserable. In one letter, he listed names: Dylan Roof, Ted Bundy, Timothy McVeigh, Men who, like him, had turned their rage outward. Arcan had tried to model himself after them. He'd studied McVeigh in particular, down to the explosives. He told the FBI he once tried to make a bomb. It failed. So he grabbed his stepfather's rifle instead. In his letters, he wrote about eating people, stabbing guards, becoming a serial killer. But behind all the theatrics was something even more disturbing. A boy who thought this would make him matter. In his final interrogation, when the detective pressed him, "What were you really after?" Arcan didn't hesitate. "The rush," he said, "just the killing part. It was exciting. It wasn't ideology. It wasn't even revenge. It was a craving for control, for chaos, for recognition." He wasn't alone in that. In the years after the shooting, Burlington joined a long list of American towns marred by violence. Columbine, Aurora, Parkland, Uvalde. Each one started the same way, with someone angry, or forgotten, or praised too late, and always with a weapon too easy to get. Arcan used a Ruger 10-22, technically a small caliber rifle. Common, legal, deadly. He took it from his stepfather's closet, knew the code, knew the weight, knew the sound it made when it clicked into place. He'd practiced. His parents had taught him to shoot. They'd meant it as a skill, not a path. But Arcan took the skill and made it into a sentence. The aftermath didn't stop with funerals. It continued in courtrooms, in trauma therapy sessions, in the unopened messages on phones that would never ring again. One survivor couldn't sleep for weeks, said the sound of fireworks made her collapse. A security guard left his job, said he still sees the faces, the ones he couldn't save. A little boy, just 8 years old, had been in the food court with his father. He now checks every exit in every store, every time. But the one who left the biggest scar never faced a jury. On April 16th, 2017, just months after the massacre, Arcan Cetin was found in his cell, unresponsive, a torn bedsheet around his neck. 2 notes were found near his body. Neither apologized. In the end, he got what he wanted. People knew his name, for a while, but as the years passed, something else happened. People started remembering the victims more. The way Sarai smiled when she got new shoes. The way Shayla always offered to cover for co-workers. The way Chuck taught his grandkids how to fish. The way Beatrice and Belinda held hands while they shopped. That's who they remembered. Not the boy with the gun. Not the smirk. Not the letters. The mall rebranded. But memories remained. And maybe that's the only justice some towns ever get. Not punishment, but preservation. To hold on to what matters. And never forget what was lost. To silence the name that sought infamy. And speak only the ones that deserve remembrance.